Okay, hi everybody and good morning. Today is the 20th of July, 2013, and we have ended Esoteric Astrology 128A. We're in the middle of a chart in which the Tibetan advised us to consider how it was that the houses can be looked at from the point of view of their spiritual meanings. And so we have finished the first three signs. Yes, we have done that. And let's see here. Yes, that's what we've done. And we're working out what he calls the higher correspondences to the material realities for which the house stands. And let's see, we're in a document that I prepared additively for various classes over time. And here we are dealing with the fifth house, which is ruled by the sun, which is a non-sacred planet. But we have to recognize that these houses, even though mundanely oriented, because the sacred planet is essentially the ruler, the sacred planet and the second ray here, it's a planet veiled by the sun. We don't know what it is, whether it's a hidden planet or one of the planets with which we are familiar, or perhaps one of the newly discovered planets which is not hidden but still is simply undiscovered. We're going to look at the original meanings and then some of the higher meanings. The original idea here is that it has to do with children, with one's offspring, one's creative works, love affairs, or love as an expression not of responsibility but simply as enjoyment, fun and pleasure. This is the feel-good house, the play house, and your talents are there. It's the show house, and it can indicate selfish activity, which simply is present because an individual seeks to enjoy themselves regardless of consequences. The personal will may also be here. I'm not doing this in any particular order because it's associated with Leo. And to some degree, just the pleasures and comforts of life, because the second ray is the ruler of this non-sacred planet, which is veiled by the sun. Falling in love is also there. The psychological part, creativity, playfulness, pleasure, spontaneity, just enjoyment and releasing energy. It's a house of, in a sense, put it here like this, house of release. I'm going to make this just a little bigger. Okay. Where the energy is expressed simply for the sake of release. So the chart is a little bit unwieldy. I'm sorry about that, but at least you can freeze the frame at any point and you can gather what is here. Now, in general, this Leo rules the heart center, the heart chakra. And I suppose to a certain extent, the heart in the head center, which is also 12-petaled. When we come to the more spiritual meanings, the expression of spiritual will and not personal will, and the actualization of the higher self and not simply the personal self. This is, in a way, it has much to do with the personal identity, like the first house in a sense, much to do with personal identity and its expression. But the higher self is involved here, and the expression of the talents which are stored in the causal body on the higher mental plane. Expression of talents stored in the causal body on the higher mental plane. It's love manifesting as the will to merge with the plan through one's own creative expression. It's not just creativity for the sake of pleasure or joy. It's responsible creativity. Creativity stimulated by the soul's love. So I will put here that it is creativity responsible to the plan. Creativity, it's an expression of the will to serve with one's abilities, special abilities. Activities which stimulate the will. Okay. In a way, it's the group heart, because every house has to do with a particular chakra. It's higher spiritual pleasures. The higher talents are expressed, soul creativity, and children of the mind and of the consciousness. So there is a kind of sharing, there's a kind of generosity that is possible here with one's abilities. And this is, actually I should mention here in an earlier sense, this house often has a lot to do with athletics, the letting off of steam in general, looking for one's personal best, and thus what can be called performance, whether athletics or in the arts, or even in the mental realm. It is showing off and showing forth. It's well, let's put it over here in the higher brackets. It is the radiance which is emitted by the individual. And of course, something that I should say, the egoic lotus as a source of radiant energy and quality. All right, when we move on to the 6th house, the traditional meaning is servants, health, employees, you as the employee, pets, and small animals. Large animals, interestingly enough, very concretely, are found in the 12th house, like whales, small animals here. And I suppose domestic animals, too, because a certain amount of training is going on of these beings. It's generally the workhouse, and it has to do with the work environment, has to do with techniques and skills. It's a house of training. I think that is well put. Obviously, all of this correlates with Virgo and with Mercury. If the Earth is connected with this house, we have no assurance that it is, whether it be Earth or Vulcan. It has a lot to do with matter in general. Let's just say the handling, or the skillful handling of material and material things. Well, it's a house in which humility is learned. It's not a house of the leader necessarily. The solar plexus chakra from the higher turn of the spiral is here. And because it is Virgo, there's some possible heart center activity as well. Virgo is the sign through which the greater part of the 6th ray is passing at this time. Virgo and Pisces together with Gemini a little bit recessed. So from a higher turn of the spiral, it's not so much servants as it is servers. But every server is in a way a servant. Let's put it like this: the servant of something higher. Of something higher and spiritual. We have here the vehicles. Well, I guess I could go back to, and maybe I did put this in here, under Cancer. Yes, the lower vehicle, the vehicles of the personality. Well, we have the same kind of thing in the 6th house, and it's the care, synthesis of the lower vehicles and, let's say, right care of the lower vehicles. In general, going back to the normal meaning, this is a medical house. And later, we're dealing with spiritual healing in that respect. The integration of soul qualities are found here, not only integration, but application of soul qualities. The ability to stand back from the lunar lords and train them. This is another one of the training houses. It has to do with students, with patients, those who are absorbing some regimen for cure, those who are served. So service, generally the service of improving the condition of someone or something. So I'll try to put that in here. I know it's a little crowded. Service of improving something or someone. Service to humanity through healing and nurturing, yes. It is a place where there's required practical knowledge to build the Antakarana, and in general required practical knowledge. The elemental and Deva kingdoms are found here, and in a way this is fitting because they are the, quote, servants, mostly, of humanity and of higher beings. The army of the voice is here found. This is the home of the lunar elementals in terms of their training. You know, it's discipleship. Discipleship is all about, for one thing, training the form so that it can better express the higher energies. This is the place where one gives up one's will for a higher will, and it indicates the many adjustments which will heal and purify oneself. So it's a material house and involves the purification of matter. Purification of matter so that it can approximate an archetype. Now we remember that Virgo rules the monadic plane, where the archetypes are found. Yes, it should be put over here that this is often a business house dealing with material exchange or exchange of substances. But as well, we would say that the spiritual business practices, if we go over here to the higher expression, are here found, and these are practices which serve the planet. In general, the lower kingdoms of nature are indicated here. Also, as you attempt to improve your condition, work upon your form, or upon, well, we call it yourself, it's not really yourself, but also work upon yourself is there as well. Exercise, diet, spiritual disciplines, all things that lead to all things. Let's get this better. All things leading to the bettering of the condition of the form. And the old Virgo saying, he who is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in that which is most. So here is where we can learn impersonality. Let's just say that the lower ego does not thrive well in this house environment. The higher ego is meant to have a place to serve. Well, it's so interesting. There have been really some wonderful books written on the houses, and one can it's just like a meditation. You just begin and you think of all of our experiences and how they can be classified. I'm looking out here and I'm seeing these trees in the forest, and I'm seeing that, well, someone has to trim them. Someone has to take care of them. This is work in with the plant kingdom. And Virgo has this connection with the three lower kingdoms, but with the plant kingdom in the second ray often much. So work with the plant kingdom, but in general, work with any of the lower kingdoms, and spiritual work as opposed to spiritual career, which we find more in the 10th house. I'm going to, however, put this in the place where it does belong, which is down here. So this is not the ideal document, but as I say, since you can freeze your screen at any time, you'll be able to study what is here. It's not in the best order, but maybe someone who has a sense of order can put this in order. I suppose the physical area, because if we mention the head and the brain in terms of the first house, and the throat in the second, and the hands in the third, and the breasts and the stomach, physically the breasts and the stomach are here in general in the fourth house. That's not correct. We would have to mention something else in relation to the sixth. Breasts and stomach and higher abdominal area around the solar plexus. We would have to mention here in the sixth house the small intestine for assimilation. And in general, this can mean, to a degree, hidden work under the influence of humility. Sometimes we wonder how much of the energy of the associated sign, Virgo in this case, should cross over in the description of the houses. There is a relationship. The sign itself and the constellation behind it gives the particular energy we're talking about, and the houses give the circumstances which are related normally to the expression of that kind of energy. In other words, when you express the Virgo energy, the kinds of things that are associated with the sixth house begin to appear. Now, of course, it's possible to have very non-Virgo-like planets in that house, or a sign ruling the cusp of that house, which is very unlike Virgo. But the field of experience will be associated with Virgo, even if the planetary or zodiacal approach to that field is characteristic of the quality of that planet, or the quality of the zodiacal sign that is there found. I think you understand what I mean here. When it comes to let's see how we're doing in terms of time. This is a little bit of a deviation, of course, but some people, I think, will find it useful. When it comes to the 7th house, it is correlated with Venus, and in a sense with the 5th ray, but also the 2nd ray of Venus. The open enemies are found here traditionally: legal relationships and legal process. There are partners found here of all kinds: marriage partner and other partnerships. The law, sex, and money are here found, and also, in a sense, where we meet others and the public in general. It's all about, let's just say, it's all about relationship. It's the relationship house. Oops. Okay. Don't want anything to disappear on us. Relationship house. And of course, we would have to mention, there can be intimate relations in the 5th house as well, but these carry responsibility. So it's a social house where social responsibility emerges. These are all related things. Interestingly enough, related to the kidneys, that's concretely. Let's see what this says here. It says chakra, but we're also in the first column of that which is traditional. We generally have been putting the part of the body. So let's do that. And this is especially the kidneys, and in terms of water balance and elimination, one of the eliminative areas. The sacral center is near this, and there is since sex is one of the major aspects of Libra, the sacral center would be involved. But also other centers can be found here. And I would say the ajna center is a factor, as there's much of decision that goes on in relation to Libra, and the ajna center would be involved. So the sacral and the ajna. In terms of open enemies, the dweller on the threshold, now we're getting into the spiritual part, or at least the part that relates to esotericism. The dweller on the threshold is here found, and this is where you confront Saturn in a way. Let's call it that, confrontation. Saturn, which is the hierarchical ruler of Libra, associated with House 7. So that is, in a way, the one you have to confront, the one that has to be purified. Of course, hopefully some of this occurred in the 4th house, where you took yourself, in the 6th house, where you took yourself in hand and you took a look at the impurities in the nature and began to work with them. This is the house of the so-called soul mate, If that is a person, perhaps, but it might be your own soul from that perspective. Special co-workers with whom you form a spiritual bond, a spiritual work relationship, we might say. Spiritual working relationship. Spiritual marriages are found here. And the path of union between the soul and personality. I think that's very important because there comes a time on the vertical part of the cross, not just the horizontal, where one is to marry or merge with the soul. And the possibility of having that kind of loving soul fusion, let's just call it soul infusion here. It's generally the house of right human relationships, and the Christ is ruled, I believe, in one respect by Libra. So his statement, you know, it's the do unto others house. Not in the cynical sense, but in the sense, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And that is the true heartfelt justice, true heartfelt justice, because there is much of the second ray in this house through Venus. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So the golden rule, the house of the golden rule, which, if enacted, would bring true justice. I have seen some interesting things. I was wondering about the rising sign of a particular individual who had really scammed hundreds of people out of millions and even billions of dollars. And he was apprehended when Saturn was in the seventh house. In other words, that's how I rectified the chart. I saw that the law caught up with him, and I realized that he had Pisces rising. Saturn was in Virgo. His confrontation with the law was a typical seventh house factor. But there is the exactitude of human law and justice, and then there is the law of the heart. Spiritual adversaries may be found here, not just your own dweller on the threshold, but sometimes there are open enemies in the spiritual field or in the occult field, the lower forces against you, and this could be considered related to the dweller on the threshold. Spirit meets matter in this house. Spirit contracts are found here, you know, lawful arrangements between people. And I think I'll put that here, over on the traditional side. Lawful arrangements or contracts between people. So spiritual contracts and pledges are here. We wish to be the pledged disciple at a certain point, so we bind ourselves to the soul with a contract. Whenever Saturn is involved, things are finalized in form, and Saturn is one of the major rulers of this house, as it is of the 10th. So not just legal contracts, but inner binding contracts. An oath is found here. And one has to function with others here according to the law of love. Well, these are some of the ideas. We don't want to look at the seventh house and say, okay, well, this is your marriage. Well, it is in a sense, but well, this is the quality of your relationships. Yes, it is, but it can be inner relationships as well, and relationships with one's own inner self. Generally, this is the house where where psychological projections are realized. You confront yourself in another. And it is the house where the Christ can be contacted, in a sense, because wherever two or more are gathered in my name, there am I. So the smallest spiritual group of two. So it's always a house with a purpose, because Saturn is so strong. It's not just a fun house. It's not just a house of release. It's the house of the social and spiritual contract, and therefore behavior is indicated here, good or bad. It's your whole, it's your social self, whereas the first house has everything to do with your unconditioned self. So let's put it like that, the social self, rather than the unconditioned self at the first house. Nope. Well, this gives an idea. I think, the process is more important. When you're an astrologer, you have to assess the level of evolution of your client. I mean, so often people who are into spiritual astrology will, for the most part, attract those who are at least aspiring towards higher possibilities. And so some aspects of the houses, which are not simply concrete, will have to be brought into play. What I've seen is that there's kind of a threefold progression. There are concrete events, and the houses mean those things, often in very literal ways. Then there are psychological meanings to the houses, and that is what I consider to be transitional. It has to do with the inner psyche, but the individual is still pretty much the person, yet the psychological treatment is given. Then there is the spiritual interpretation of the human being attempting to become the soul, or attempting to express the soul, to serve, to live as the soul, to somehow bring the soul energy into expression. And for the most part, these larger areas here, where we're talking about the various houses, that has to do with that type of orientation. Clearly we could look at all this in terms of medical astrology, psychological astrology, the astrology of form, and now we're trying to look at implications for the spiritual astrology of the soul and the higher faculties of man. All right, so we then will look at house number 8. Well, the most concrete meanings, I'll try to find them here, are death and debt and sacrifice. This is the house of, as DK said, major separations and losses. Major separations and losses, and detachments. There's a severing that goes on in this house. Now, it's also quite a financial house involving investment, money, financial management. But I can see that there are some things here that perhaps should have been put in another place. The negative forces of the astral plane, that doesn't really belong there. It's rather an occult factor. And psychologically, transformation and regeneration, but some of these things, the transmutation of values, transformation and regeneration really belongs more over here, perhaps in the psychological area. Other people's money and resources, very definitely. Those are concrete factors relating to the 8th house. Well, the desires of the personality can come in as well. it is related to the astral body, no question about it. Related, whoop, no, I don't want that. I have to have my little bracket there that will help me. Related to the astral body, just as the second, just as house 2 is. There's a lot in common. I mean, house 3 and 9 are along what I call the mental axis. House 2 and 6 along the desire or astral axis. House 1 and 7 are along the identity axis. I call these things such. And house 4 and 6 along the security axis. And house 5 and 11 along the creativity axis. And house 6 and 12 along the adjustment or healing axis. There are probably other and better words for those things, but that tells us something about what goes on. There's also with house 3 and 6 a lot about vitality and about activity. So related in a way to the etheric body, whereas house 1 and 7 probably have much to do with the mind. We know that Libra rules supermind and Aries comes forth from the plane of mind and rules. So we're back here in house number 8, and the money of others, death, desires of the personality, death, debt, and sacrifice. Debt is an important factor, where you owe, and loss, investment, and the growth of investment, financial management. It depends on what ray we may be dealing with. And in general, the resources of others. It's where we dig deeply into things. And it has a lot to do, well, I suppose, with the old Christian word, sin and vice, and overcoming these things. Since it's related to Scorpio, it's kind of like a Hydra house as well. So it runs deep and things are hidden here. And I think, I'm not sure that I had sexuality here, but this is one of the houses of sexuality with a psychological component. But also, we can have all kinds of undesirable things going on here as well. It all depends on the moral character of the individual under consideration. I mean, after all, it is a plutonic house. I suppose if you were, kidnapped and if your life were in danger and you were threatened by negative forces, this 8th house could well be involved. And I suppose, in a very negative sense, if you were to be tortured or submitted to great duress by the ill will of another, then that house would be involved as well. So in a way, it is a house, house 8, associated with the Black Lodge, and those who deliberately practice negativity. Well, okay. As I say, I think I kind of made a composite of many things in this chart, but the first and especially the last column is what I have contributed to it, and that is what we're mostly concerned with, the spiraling up of the meaning of the conventional and more concrete meanings of the house. It is a psychological house, and I could put that sort of here in the psychological column. A definitely psychological house, wherein motives and deep incentives can be uncovered. And as I said, a house of research definitely, because this has to do generally with the uncovering of that which has been hidden. The sex organs are evolved here, yes, traditionally in astrology. I think I don't want to have the dense organs actually listed in this particular column. Sexuality with a psychological component, and physically the organs of sex are found here. This is an area, Scorpio, which can be connected with the base of the spine center and also with the sacral center. The base of the spine, how can we do this? Base of spine center is ruled by Pluto and Mars, which are directly connected with Scorpio. Okay, so this is in general a house of conflict, if we are going to take the scorpionic meaning. And often, well, inner or outer, depending on the orientation of the individual. This is not an easy house, and detachments are found here, major detachments. How does DK talk about this? I wonder if I can find that. If we look here a little higher. We've been in an area here, a house of major separations and of death. That's how DK talks about this house. It's good to keep it simple, obviously. I've done a bit more elaborating than perhaps leads to clarity of thought, but in general, I would like to say that this is a house of sorrow, but also of victory. So one can be presented with great challenges here, of a psychological kind, but even of a physical kind, and of a kind that, you know, can threaten the life. But there is an overcoming factor that is going on here because it is Scorpio. So this is a house, like the sixth house is connected with the purifications of discipleship. And let's see, I hope, well, if I didn't put it down, I should have. Yes, purifying matter, I did. The house of discipleship, the vehicle of rebirth into the consciousness of the soul. But let's put it like this. Death to the personality comes before the rebirth. So there's a detachment here from traditionally held forms or forms to which one is attracted. There's the transmutation here of personal desire into the wishes and requirements of the group. So it's the house where the group desire body is found. You can almost add the word group to any of the houses from 7 through 12, and you can look at the meaning of the first 6 houses and simply add the group to it. You know, there's identity and group identity. There's desire and group desire. There's mentality, and then there's group mind, opposite. And there's the question of security in the 4th, and group security. And then there is personal creativity in the 5th, and group creativity in the 11th. And the individual health, let us say, and work in the 6th, and group health and work in the 12th. So transformation of personal and material resources into group and spiritual resources. Sometimes there's the question of whether we own something ourselves or own things in common. And in the 8th house, group resources are there, but also group spiritual resources and powers. And I would say that here the hidden cities and powers can emerge. There's transformation from density into subtlety here, and liberation into an attitude of service and victory for the soul. That's one of the places here where the conflict can result in victory for the soul. The inevitable conflicts of House 8 can result in victory for the soul. It is a house of occultism and of all hidden matters, a house of psychic research. You know, if you are, let's say you're a ghost hunter, as there are these days, they love to stay in the haunted houses at night from rather a scientific urge and to see what's moving around. The research, psychic research, and general the psychic powers and research into those powers, and the acquisition of those powers. This is a power house. It's related to the first ray and related to Hercules, who wielded strength. Sacrifices are here, victories through relinquishment, astral travel where you are separated from your body, from your outer body. And so, yes, a house related to the astral plane. Because, let's see, death throws us in the first phase. Death throws us onto the astral plane. So there is astral travel and all kinds of astral phenomena here. As I said, a deeply psychological house. Contact with the world of illusion, which is also ruled by Scorpio, and the possibility of overcoming that illusion, and like the second house, a house of the glamorization. And we could say that about Taurus too, that there is deglamorizing through detachment from certain energies going on in the second house. This, like the moon in Scorpio, this is a house where one can experience the death of the personality, or at least what this really is all about is, what that means is the death of personality desire. Here we can realize our karmic debts, what we owe to others, and we have to resupply these others from whom we may have taken something. Now, it is a house of debt in a conventional sense over here, and, well, so is the second house, related in that respect, gains and losses. So this is where you give up your desires to pay your debts. It's a house connected with the Kundalini, and in a way so is the fourth house, the power at the base, we might say. I tend to, the way the chart is set up, I want to say something here about Kundalini at the base of the chart may be involved. I've seen some people with Pluto at the fourth house. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be severed from their family of origin, though it can mean something of that nature. But it has to do with pulling on the deep power of matter and participating in its rising. Well, we're back here at the 8th house. In general transformation and the going through hell to get to heaven. Working on yourself psychologically and general warfare, the internal war spiritually to overcome your own negativity, seeing through astral illusion and mental illusion. And we ask ourselves the question, what energy do we owe to other people? This is in terms of debt. Well, we could put the different planets in each one of these houses, and to an extent I've done that, and maybe at some point I'll have to go over my own charts and tabulations in this manner, not just a written manner, but to make it a little bit more direct. So this is the place where matter is overcome, the triple M. The tripleness of the M, let's just say the place where matter form is overcome and the soul spirit triumphs. So this is, this is also a house of spiritual victory, and the opposite, or spiritual defeat, as when one falls and becomes subject to temptation and loses ground. So in general, over here, in the in the traditional area, house of sorrow, but also victory, and yet defeat. Death and defeat. The agony. Well, that's another way I'd like to put it psychologically, in a way. This is the agony house. It's a house of great suffering, but it's, in a way, the house of, I don't know if I put this here, the house of death unto life. The death that you have to pass through, and of course, we wouldn't be complete here unless we talked about the dark night of the soul. So there is despair here, potentially. And darkness, well, it's just the house of darkness and light. So dark gives way to the light of day associated with Scorpio. As I said, you could write a book about it, and people have written books on these things. I'm just sort of free associating and trying to demonstrate that on the spiritual path, with what we encounter, the different houses can indicate those kinds of experiences. This houses are related to different laws, the soul law, the law of repulse. And if we look at the 7th house, soul law, the law of polar union, or of magnetic impulse, which is ruled by Libra, and also has much of Venus in it when we consider soul union. So egoic groups can be found here in the 7th, or let's just say unions with others on a soul basis. I'll put that here. Unions between souls, or the recognition of soul union and relationship. Well, we've done 4 houses, and we're pretty close. I think that is probably all we should do for this particular program. We could begin house number 9, but I don't think there's much sense to it. We can probably do Sagittarius through Pisces, house number 9 through 12, in the next program. One of the things we have to do, though, as I say, we have to be very careful about the confusion which exists in this much lesser zodiac, which is the houses, and the energies themselves. Do you recognize the house in which you are in at any one moment? It's not just a question of moving your body from place to place. It's a question of your state of mind, what you are concentrating upon, what you are thinking about. Of course, the physical body may move and you may undertake those acts. I mean, right now when I am working with you, I think I'm working in house number 3 and in house number 9 simultaneously, trying to convey a larger perspective. At the same time, there are house 11 implications to it, and maybe house 5 because it's an aspect of creativity. Sometimes, according to the point of view, it's possible to be in all houses simultaneously. It's a question of the quality of what you're doing and the perspective. I'm sitting here in a workroom at the moment. It's also sometimes used as a healing room. Am I in the 6th house? Well, it's not being used for healing, but it is being used for work and for service and to fulfill my duty. So in a sense, there is a 6th house meaning. One has to, when several houses are involved in any type of activity, you have to prioritize and say, what type of house does this experience most represent? Others can be involved. Shortly, I'll have to go into the city for an errand. I'll be in house number 3 for short trips. But the purpose of the trip will be to help open a health clinic, obviously house 6 again, but in terms of what my wife will do, it's to give a blessing upon that clinic. So the hidden protection of house number 12 is found. It's a much more fluid thing than we can imagine, but just take a look at your life and try to classify the kinds of activities that you are participating in and the psychological state in which you find yourself. Because different thoughts, different desires take you into different houses, and it can be very rapid change. I'm looking out here and some people are doing some work in the outside yard. It's a work with wood and with stone, and they're building things. It's very much a house number 6 type of activity. There's going to be activities here this weekend concerning the Sirius Festival, and there's a lot of cooking going on for the people that will come. And this is house 6, the sustaining of the form and the act of serving and making sure there is nutrition and so forth. All of that is house 6. Maybe in your life you can see whether the circumstances in which you are customarily engaged reflect the way the planets are distributed in the houses. I mean, first, forget your horoscope for a minute and just look around at life and say, in what houses do I most participate? And then look at your horoscope and see whether, in fact, there are indications of emphasis for those particular houses. It's a fascinating subject. I was always interested in houses. I remember when Dane Rudyard, I think his students asked him to write something on the houses. He was a marvelous philosopher and abstract thinker. He did, I think, write The Spectrum of Human Experience, something like that. They said, can't you be concrete, Mr. Rudyard, so we can grab a hold of something instead of the larger philosophical, psychological ideas? Well, he had Mercury in Pisces, and I suspect he was a second-ray soul with a lot of abstract third ray and fourth ray, so it was more difficult than it would be for someone with a powerful fifth ray and, let's say, seventh ray and so forth. So he wrote this book on the houses, The Spectrum of Human Experience. And in a way, I stopped reading astrology books a long time ago. I just decided to think about it for myself, except for the Tibetans books, of course, where they run so deep that, you could never tire of reading them. So I don't know what the more recent books on the houses may be, over the last even 30 years, let's say, or more, 35 years, something like that. I'm not sure what they are anymore, but what I am interested in is working with people who have spiritual objectives and for whom a higher interpretation of the houses is required. In the next program, I guess I'm just doing single programs now because things are getting quite busy around the time of the Sirius Festival. So I'm going to simply call this that this is the end of Esoteric Astrology Adventure 129. Is that it? A. Maybe one shouldn't even put the A there, but at least it's a consistent system. And beginning of Esoteric Astrology Adventure 130A, and we'll see if we go beyond that. So, all right, everybody. Hopefully you're getting something out of this. I know it's not the Tibetans' words, but much of it is about the Tibetans' ideas and using the process of analogical spiraling. Use the fourth ray and find the analogy, the higher analogy to the concrete presented fact. He tries to take us out of the world of particular concretions into things which really pertain to our psycho-spiritual development, and that's what we're attempting to do. So we'll see you before long when I take this up again shortly. See you then.